from the National News Studio, Sri Lanka.
Coming to you live from the National News Studio, this is the news. My name is Clifford Richards.
And I'm Vidushini Sadis Kumar. Let's have a look at the headlines for tonight.
Parliament approves the IMF agreement. 120 voted for the agreement. China will set up a modern crude oil purifying station in Sri Lanka. The President stresses that developing countries alone cannot minimize climatic changes. Needy families in Jaffna received free rice. Spain records the highest temperature of 38 degrees.
In your local stories this evening, the Parliament today approved the agreement made with the International Monetary Fund. At the voting, 120 parliamentarians voted for the agreement and only 25 voted against. Therefore, the agreement passed in Parliament by majority of 95 votes except A.H.M. Fauzi. All other Samagi Janabala Wege parliamentarians were not in the House at the time of voting. Upon the receipt of IMF credit facility, President Ranil Wickremesinghe said that the agreement with the IMF will be presented to the Parliament for approval. The President also promised to allocate a debate in this regard. Accordingly, the three-day debate on this matter started last Wednesday. A.H.M. Fauzi of the Samagi Janabala Wege voted for the agreement today.
Yeah, Honorable Fauzi, in the interest of the country and future generation, I am saying yes. Yes.
Meanwhile, parliamentarians Andra Priyadarshini Yapa, John Senaviratne and Sudarshini Fernanda Pulle, who presented the opposition, voted for the proposal. All MPs of the SLFP also voted for the proposal.
And meanwhile, parliamentarians expressed their views over the agreement with the International Monetary Fund. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena says that the government has been able to double the tax income during the first quarter. Imposing taxes has affected some employees. Some elements criticize the reduce of taxes from the budget. However, the government has increased the income to fill the gap of the budget deficit. Now they criticize the increase of taxes. Samagi Janabala Wege parliamentarian Kabir Hashim said that our idea to consult the IMF will not differ at this moment. It is the only alternative at this juncture. However, the country must have a roadmap to get the IMF assistance. Minister Ali Sabri says that it is easy to criticize the IMF agreement. If the opposition was in power, they would not allow to have talks with the IMF. Some parliamentarians say that the country must put forward other terms and conditions. It is not practical. The country has to agree with the IMF conditions. NPP parliamentarian Anurukumar Disanayake says that it is impossible to talk only about the economy without changing the political culture. Ranil Wickremesinghe is a fantasy at present. We represent ground reality. This agreement with the IMF is not approved by the people. State Minister Shahan Singh said that it is the same way that the opposition expressed their objections. Opposition always express their protests against any government. Those who are willing to change the political culture should reveal the solution for the economic problem. The government has implemented a clear program at this moment. And moving on with more local stories.
Yes, President Ranil Wickremesinghe says that only the developing countries, including Sri Lanka, cannot minimize the climatic changes in the world. The developed countries that are the most responsible for the environmental pollution should contribute funds to save the environment. The President made these comments at the annual Environmental Awarding Ceremony held in the BMICH, Colombo today. The President's Environmental Awarding Ceremony 2021-2022 has been organized by the Central Environmental Authority. 90 persons representing industries, businesses, projects, institutions, mass media and social media received gold, silver and bronze medals with certificates. Gold medals were distributed by President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
As we become a green economy, we also need the legislation. And there will be a lot of new legislation in the coming year, a new Environmental Act, because our Environment Act was passed in the 80s. There has been far more advances thereafter. A Climate Change Act, Living Entities Act, like to have Singharaja, Horton Plains, Peak Wilderness, Knuckles and Mahavalley as living entities. We'll have to look at the Forest Act and bring a new one, which will also cater for reforestation, a law to protect Muthurajavela swamp, and one on protect scenic beauties. So that's a large number of laws that have to be drafted and presented in the coming year. In addition to it, Sri Lanka intends to play a role in the global campaign for climate change mitigation, and that is going to be the International Climate Change University, which we propose here, which can be used by officials and NGOs and others for training in climate change and also for postgraduate awards. So this is our scheme of going ahead and giving priority to climate change mitigation, environment and a green economy. What we are faced with, and a lot of the developing countries are faced with, is a question of resources. How do we access them? The debt for nature swaps, are we getting the carbon credits? There are many financial schemes and instruments available. How can we, all of us in all the countries attempt to get the benefit of these schemes? Sri Lanka certainly will, as a country, we are examining how we can benefit and how we can apply for the schemes. But the question is, Sri Lanka alone cannot change the climate change in the world. We are alone, ourselves alone can't do it. The whole world has to do it. And there the question comes up, is there enough funding for all this? How do you find the money, the financial resources for these, especially for climate change mitigation and protecting the environment? Now this is a question we have to ask, because the actual damage was not done by us. The damage was done by the West and the other countries that decided to develop. So the developed countries, through the process of industrialization, a number of wars, especially the 2 world wars and even the Vietnam War, all have contributed to bringing around the climate change. Now we have to suffer the consequences. So what we say is that funding has to come. In addition to what we have or what we can raise, there has to be a funding available from those who are responsible for it. Because as far as we are concerned, we can't put all our money into climate change. We have to look at education, we have to look at health, we have to look at infrastructure. All those has to be met with.
Meanwhile, President Ranil Wickremesinghe further said that new institution will be established soon to study Sri Lanka's history. This will be set up with the support of National Museum, Department of Archives, Department of Archaeology, the Cultural Triangle, state universities and Royal Asiatic Society. The relevant legal draft will soon be completed. The President made these remarks participating at the 178th anniversary of the Royal Asiatic Society held at the Mahavalley Centre yesterday. Several first copies of the periodicals published by the Royal Asiatic Society were handed over to the President at this occasion.
Chinese ambassador in Sri Lanka, Xi Jinping, says that a Chinese investor has taken measures to establish a modern crude oil purifying center in Sri Lanka, which has a capacity of 4 metric tons crude oil a day. The ambassador made these remarks when he met the Mahanayaka Theros of the Malwatta and Askiriya chapters in Kandy yesterday. Well, the ambassador first went to the Askiriya Mahaviharya and met the most venerable Varakagoda Sri Jnanaratna Thera. Later, the ambassador met the Mahanayaka Thera of the Malwatta chapter, the most Tibbatuava Sri Sumangala Thera. Having a discussion with the Thera, the ambassador said that the existing crude oil purifying center has been constructed in the 1960s. After the proposed Chinese investment is completed, the new purifying center will cause significant changes in the distribution of fuel in Sri Lanka. China has planned to set up 150 filling stations in the country. China has planned to invest about 120 to 140 million US dollars in Sri Lanka this year. The Chinese ambassador pointed out that these investments will lead to many employment opportunities for the people in Sri Lanka.
You know, now the Sri Lanka is gradually resuming normals. The urgent thing for Sri Lanka government how to attract international investors to come to Sri Lanka. So recently, the China merchant invest South Asia commercial and logistic center that will set a strong signal to the whole world. As a government, we're happy to see the companies between two countries enhance cooperation. In terms of what kind of the problem that is the review today will resolve. At least we can say provide more supplies to the consumers. China always play a very important role in Sri Lanka data treatment. I think the Chinese relevant financial institute have good communications and good channels to coordinate with the Sri Lanka counterpart.
Meanwhile, United Petroleum Company Australia has also expressed willingness to join the fuel distribution and selling process in Sri Lanka. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara says that he had completed talks with the Australian company online. The minister tweeted that the talks were held over the agreements of fuel sale, the state policy matters and dates of operations. The minister stated that the United Petroleum in Australia will announce the dates of the initiation of the operations in the island next week.
Students' Union of the Kelaniya University started a protest march in front of the campus this evening, demanding the government to free the students' activists who have been arrested by the police. Convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Vasantha Mudalige, was also present at the protest march. Police came to the scene and read out a court's order imposed with regard to violation of road rules. Riot Squad, a police special task force, have also been called to the scene. However, the students engaged in a protest for about an hour and later moved out of the area. State Minister Janaka Vakumbara says that the state employees were to contest the local government election will be temporarily transferred to the closest place out of the contesting ward. A cabinet paper in this connection will be submitted to the cabinet ministers' meeting next week. The state minister revealed that the facts at the parliament. Samagijana Balawege parliamentarian Rohana Bandara said that the government had said that the employees will be paid the basic salary as the local government election has been postponed indefinitely. However, some employees who were to contest the election have not yet been paid even the basic salary. After all, the employees are unable to meet the monthly expenses with the basic salary only. State Minister Janaka Vakumbara said that the employees have been paid the basic salary up to the 25th of April. Some heads of the department are not familiar with the rules of the public service. A cabinet paper in this connection has been submitted by the Prime Minister. The government has agreed with the Election Commission to reinstate these employees to the closest place out of the ward they contest. Samagijana Balawege parliamentarian Lakshman Karyala said that the solution is harsher than a punishment. An employee of the Petroleum Corporation has no alternative place to work. The problem can be solved if they are allowed to serve at the original place of work. State Minister Janaka Vakumbara said that he and the Prime Minister held talks with the Elections Commission now that the recommendation given by the Elections Commission has been implemented. Opposition leader Sajith Premadas said that the opposition parties cannot talk to the Elections Commission in this regard, and it is the responsibility of the government to make arrangement to pay the due salaries to the employees who temporarily resigned to contest the election.
Well, the certificate awarding ceremony for the first batch who followed the acting academy course at the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation was held yesterday at Studio 3 in the corporation premises. Well, this 6-month course was initiated with the objective of providing formal education on acting. Senior artist Chandasiri provided theory and practical aspects of the course. Ramya Alves is the director of this course. The certificate awarding ceremony was held under the patronage of Chairman of SLRC W.B. Ganegala. The Acting Academy first batch is consisted of 112 students. The Dhammajagoda Memorial Award for the best male student was conferred on Chintaka Vimalasinga. Kavisha Pereira was honoured as the best female student.
The Sri Lanka Navy Marine Corps presented 3 special combat all-terrain vehicles to President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the Presidential Secretariat today. The vehicles were produced locally by Ideal Motor Company and are a part of the new concept of the Sri Lanka Navy Marine Corps to combat illegal activities, terrorist activities and various smuggling activities along the coast of Sri Lanka. The vehicles will be used to combat various illegal activities and drug trafficking in Colombo and Mana areas in the future.
Well, the distribution of rice free to low-income families was held today in Velane area in Jaffna under the support of the Army. Well, 220 selected families in the Velane Divisional Secretariat area were distributed with rice today for the second time. Minister Douglas Devananda, State Minister Anupa Pasquale, President and Chief of Staff Sagala Ratnayaka and Army Commander Lieutenant General Vikram Liyanage were present at this occasion. People in Velane area says that the distribution of rice for them is a relief for them.
Well, the main water supply line from the Ambatale water purifying reservoir has a leak at the Polduva Bridge area. The Water Supply and Drainage Board says the cause of the leak is due to a certain group has removed the bolts and nuts that connect the supply line. Repair works are now being carried out and water supply into several areas will be interrupted. Valkada Police is conducting investigations into the incident.
Moving on, women working in Sri Lanka's energy sector gained a powerful tool this week to promote their advancement in the industry with the launch of the Sri Lanka National Chapter of Waypower. With the United States Agency for International Development's Sri Lanka Energy Project and also the Asia Development Bank collaborated with the launch of the national chapter, which is affiliated to the regional South Asia Waypower Network. In addition to promoting women in energy, this World Bank initiative also increases women's participation in STEM education. The launch feature a panel discussion and also engaged in a power sector raise awareness about the program to encourage high-level officials' support to ensure its sustainability and success. Recent World Bank statistics show women represent only about 13% of Sri Lanka's power sector employment. Among its first reports, Sri Lanka Waypower plans to conduct training in gender equality and social inclusion and a workshop in May to develop an action plan to create and monitor gender activities which targets the goals under its 5 pillars: STEM education, recruitment, development, retention, and policy and institutional change.
United Arab Emirates Sri Lanka Business Forum and Trade Fair will be held from October 20th to 29th. A plenary discussion in this regard was held at the President's office yesterday. President's Secretary Saman Ekanayaka chaired the meeting. The event is scheduled to take place at the Iraq Exhibition Centre in the United Arab Emirates. The Federation of Sri Lanka Chambers of Commerce and Industry and the Sri Lanka Tourism Industry Board are jointly organising this trade fair under the theme of strengthening economic relations between Sri Lanka and the United Arab Emirates in the post-pandemic world. The primary objective of the exhibition is to explore new opportunities for Sri Lankan business entities in the economic context of the United Arab Emirates, the Gulf States and the Middle East, and to strengthen business relations between companies from the United Arab Emirates, the Gulf and the Middle East and Sri Lankan companies. Additionally, the event aims to promote Sri Lankan exports such as products and services, improve bilateral trade, investment, employment opportunities, tourism and financial cooperation between Sri Lanka and the United Arab Emirates.
Well, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and the delegation of German Industry and Commerce together with the Sri Lanka Export Development Board organized an awareness program for Sri Lankan exporters in preparation for the forthcoming German Act on corporate due diligence in supply chains that came in force in Germany from 1st January 2023. Well, the initiative is aimed to increase awareness regarding new law in Germany and outline the challenges and opportunities for Sri Lankan export industries. Well, more than 75 guests, including exporters, Sri Lankan agencies, professional associations and relevant stakeholders, attended this event, which was organized from the 25th of April 2023 at the Movenpick Hotel. The German Supply Chain Act, titled Act on Corporate Due Diligence Obligations in Supply Chains, is an effort on the part of the German federal government to work with enterprises towards improving the human rights situation around the world and giving globalization a social dimension while taking 2030 agenda for sustainable development into account.
But in practice, the German government and very soon the European Union as a whole are firmly committed to doing so, including in the business context. Today's event is an important step to raising awareness in Sri Lanka. Here is the main message. The German supply chain law is by no means a threat to exporters in Sri Lanka. On the contrary, it helps foster competitiveness of Sri Lankan companies as well as secure their market access to the European Union.
At the delegation of German Industry and Commerce, we have mainly two objectives. One of them is to assist German companies in creating business opportunities in Sri Lanka through our market entry support, and we advocate for with local authorities to create a level playing field for foreign investment. Secondly, we help Sri Lankan companies to enter the German market, mainly through our organization of delegation trips to German trade fairs and arranging B2B meetings. And what we tell Sri Lankan companies when we prepare them for the market entry in Germany is that from this year on, they will not only have to comply with certifications such as BSCI, SA8000, SMETA, SEDEX, but they will also have to comply with the requirements of the German Sustainable Supply Chain Due Diligence Act.
EDB also has changed their role in facilitating and promoting Sri Lankan exports. Especially, EU is our second largest market for our exporters. So therefore, we try and facilitate exports to the EU region by being a promoter, by being a knowledge provider, and also being an institution which looks at bottlenecks in the country, especially, and clearing those and setting exporter-friendly policies, lobbying with the government, lobbying with other organizations. So that is our main role.
The Russian ambassador in Sri Lanka, Levon S. Zagarian, highlighted the bilateral relations between the two nations and to further stringent ties for economic cooperation and to benefits, growth and development of Sri Lanka.
I would like to say that first of all, my gratitude to Russian Cultural Center and to our staff of military attaché for the participation of organization of this press conference, and there you will be able to watch a film dedicated to the situation in Donbass. We just expected the next session of our, let's say, Intergovernmental Economic Commission, as we say, Joint Economic Commission, which is to be held, I think, in May, in the format of online format. From your side, it's a Minister of Trade. From our side, is a Federal Agency of Fishery. We are talking about May, which is to be, and we will discuss different issues of our bilateral cooperation between the two countries. On the 3rd of May, I will have a meeting with your Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Mahinda. We will discuss some bilateral issues with him, and also with some other officials about some other bilateral projects.
High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle called on the chief prelates of the Askiriya and also the Malvat chapters recently. During the calls, the High Commissioner highlighted the centuries-old relationship between India and Sri Lanka. He appreciated the steps taken by the government of India to support Sri Lanka, especially during various crises. He first called on the chief prelate of the Malvat chapter. During his visit, he thanked the chief prelate for his blessings to a strong India-Sri Lanka relationship. Inquiring about the ferry services between India and Sri Lanka, the Most Venerable Thibbatuave Sri Siddhartha Sumangalathera stressed that this initiative will benefit particularly the common people of both countries. The High Commissioner then called on the Chief Prelate of Askiriya chapter. He also thanked the Chief Prelate on his personal guidance and support to activities carried out by the Assistant High Commission of India in Kandy for the benefit of the people of Sri Lanka. The Most Venerable Varakagoda Sri Jnanaratana Mahanayaka Thera recalled the visit of Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi to Kandy in 2017 and appreciated the growing cooperation and close ties between Sri Lanka and India. The High Commissioner shared a singular translation of the Prime Minister's speech with both chief prelates. Well, that's news at home. We take a short break and we'll be back with international stories shortly.
Prima Kutumi Fantamai.
Welcome back to the news, and it's not only in Sri Lanka but in Spain as well. Spain recorded its hottest ever temperature for April, that's yesterday, hitting 38.8 Celsius. The record figure was reached in Cordoba airport in southern Spain just after 1500 local time. For days, a blistering heat wave has hit the country with temperatures 10 to 15 Celsius warmer than expected for April. It's been driven by a mass of very hot air from Africa, coupled with slow-moving weather systems. Experts were surprised by the scale of heat experienced across southern Spain in recent days. Schools will be allowed to adapt their timetables to avoid the worst of the heat. And also Madrid Underground has trains passing more frequently than usual in order to prevent long waits on the platform. And the public swimming pools are expected to open a month earlier than normal.
Prima Kutumi Fantamai.
Welcome back, and now on to a sports update. Sri Lanka won the two-match test series against Ireland 2-0 today, and Sri Lanka won the second test match played in Galle against Ireland by an innings and 10 runs.
And moving on with more details on that, Sri Lanka players have been able to set up a number of test records in this match. Well, this is the 100th test victory for Sri Lanka team. Sri Lanka has played 311 test matches so far. Another significant feature of this match is that the spinner Prabhat Jayasuriya setting up a world record. He has claimed 50 test wickets only playing 7 tests. He has claimed the fastest 50 of test wickets along with Charlie Turner in Australia. He's also claimed 50 test wickets in 7 matches.
Prima Kutumi Fantamai.
Well, that's it for tonight's news. Have a good night.